Okay, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking some bizarre, truly profound philosophical ideas, but they're coming from the most unlikely sources: fictional monsters. We're talking zombies, giant aliens, fairies, and dinosaurs. But scratch the jump scares. We're treating them as deeply cynical philosophers who are basically here to deconstruct our entire reality. By looking through the eyes of these raw, survival-driven creatures, we're going to examine nihilism, the absolute inescapable creep of entropy, the illusion of free will, and the very foundation of our artificial human structures.
So, here's our roadmap. First, monsters as modern philosophers. Second, how entropy steals your spark. Third, nihilism in the chaotic void. Fourth, the free will illusion. Fifth, our artificial human structures. And finally, number 6, the infernal gene remains.
All right, part 1. Monsters as modern philosophers.
What if the monsters under the bed are really just here to critique our egos? You know, we love to think we're somehow above it all, right? Safely tucked away in our modern cities, completely separated from the brutal, messy mechanics of nature. But these absurd entities act as this incredibly dark mirror. They're basically here to tear that human exceptionalism down, piece by piece, and remind us that, hey, no matter how special we think we are, we absolutely aren't immune to the rules of nature.
Which leads us to part 2, entropy, stealing your spark.
Let's start with a rather unusual fairy, one who explains our biological agency in a, well, pretty eerie way. This creature frames human life like this. We aren't these magical, sovereign beings. We're just biological machines. And exactly like any machine, our energy inevitably fizzles out as time marches forward. This fairy literally views us as little more than switches, just turning off one by one.
So the key takeaway here is that this fairy is actually a giant metaphor for entropy. In physics, entropy is that natural, unavoidable decline into disorder. In this context, it acts like a silent thief, robbing us of our vitality. It flits away with our adenosine triphosphate, our cellular energy, and it frankly doesn't care at all about our desires, our grand plans for the future, or how desperately we just want to keep going.
Just think about the sheer scope of what we lose to that arrow of time. It's not only the physical energy that gets siphoned away, it's the very psychological optimism we absolutely rely on just to get out of bed. Entropy steals our concentration, our motivation, and our sheer willpower. We can secretly deny it all we want, pretending we're going to hustle forever. But ultimately, the switch just gets flipped off.
All right, part 3, nihilism and the chaotic void.
So, having completely dismantled our biology and optimism, we're going to zoom way out to the macro-cosmic scale, courtesy of a giant alien. This entity looks out and perceives ultimate emptiness. It completely strips away those comforting little delusions we have about the future. For the alien, once progression halts, there's absolutely nothing left. Only nihil, total, absolute nothingness. The cosmic void simply does not care about your aspirations.
And the alien actually mocks the human psyche for this. It points out how we invent these cohesive, neat little timelines and subjective meanings, basically just to hide from the vicious, random jungle that is reality. We're out here desperately trying to plan a sensible through-line for our lives, while totally ignoring the fact that the brutal, chaotic universe could just wipe us out at literally any second.
And that brings us to a really uncomfortable question. Are our choices even real, or are they just a byproduct of nature's background static? I mean, if everything ultimately leads to nihilism and decay, how much control do you and I actually have?
Let's look at part 4, the free will illusion.
Brace yourself, because these creatures do not think highly of human choice. We're looking at two slightly different but equally fatalistic perspectives. You've got the alien, who sees inescapable, deterministic force fields leading to nothing. And then you have Zombie 4, who views existence as nature's unpredictable, chaotic randomness, kind of like an avalanche bearing a mountain. But both agree on one core thing. Nature runs on raw, blind mechanics. There is zero room for true free will. I actually love how Zombie 4 puts this. It's a brilliant cosmic analogy that brutally reminds us just how indifferent the universe is to our survival. Nature isn't sitting around making rational decisions. It's just chaotic mechanics doing their thing. Just like the sun isn't shedding any tears for a freezing Pluto, the universe simply does not care about your personal trajectory.
Moving on to part 5, our artificial human structures.
Here is the real killing blow of the whole explainer. We've talked physics, we've talked the cosmos, but how do these survival-driven creatures view our everyday society?
The contrast is honestly stark. When a zombie wants brains or a dinosaur wants prey, it's driven by natural chaos. It's an honest, raw hunger. But human constructs, we build these massive systems that pretend to care. We mask our raw desires behind a polite veil of society, when a lot of the time we're really just empowering corruption using imaginary currency.
There's this darkly funny and, yeah, pretty gross rant from Zombie 2 that hits the nail on the head regarding our economic structures. It basically asks, why do we use this imaginary currency to pretend we're helping people, when in reality it's usually just used to amplify the egos of people who already have power, floating their hoarse vomit on waves of sound, as it poetically puts it. We reward ego over collective well-being, and even a brain-dead zombie can see right through the hypocrisy.
Finally, Part 6. The infernal gene remains.
Our last creature, the Allosaurus, drops a chilling evolutionary thesis about who we actually are underneath all our polite, civilized facades. It argues that the sheer viciousness of the dinosaur age didn't just vanish when the asteroid hit. No, it adapted. It calls this psychopathic savus, basically an infernal gene of raw psychopathy. That pure, brutal apex predator instinct, it's alive and well, just scurrying right there in the bloodstream of modern humanity.
Think about our trajectory as a species for a second. We start at step 1, raw survival, pure physicality and chaotic luck. Then, step 2, evolution gives us camouflage. We develop traits to manipulate others. And that leads us straight into step 3, artificial bureaucracy. The wild thing is, we never actually transcended our brutal origins. We just built ridiculously complex systems and endless pages of promises to cover up that infernal gene. We smile and pretend to care, but the underlying psychopathy is still pulling the strings.
So as we wrap things up, I want to leave you with this one provocative thought. The next time you're dealing with some massive bureaucracy, or earning a paycheck, or listening to a politician's grand promise, take a step back and ask yourself, are you looking at a system built on genuine human care? Or are you just looking at the evolutionary camouflage of an apex predator in a suit? Definitely something to chew on as you navigate the chaos out there. Thanks so much for learning with me today.